These earrings were a gift from my late husband. Helen's voice cut through the dinner conversation as she held up the diamond studs, her eyes locked on mine. Funny how they disappeared after Sarah used my bathroom, then magically reappeared in my jewelry box this morning. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. My cheeks burned as conversations died. Even Tom, my husband of just 8 months, shifted uncomfortably beside me instead of defending me. I never took those earrings. But that night 3 years ago at Helen's birthday dinner marked the first accusation in what would become an unmistakable pattern. The drive home was tense. When I asked Tom if he believed I'd stolen from his mother, he sighed. Mom's just protective of Dad's gifts. Let's forget about it. But I couldn't forget, especially when 6 weeks later at his cousin's baby shower, Aunt Judith's silver bracelet went missing. I noticed Sarah admiring it earlier, Judith announced, eyebrows raised. Everyone pretended to be occupied with their cake while stealing glances my way. Tom's reaction was bizarre. Rather than defending me, he became agitated, insisting we search everyone's bags immediately. His face flushed as sweat beaded on his forehead. When his sister Rachel suggested waiting, he nearly shouted at her. The bracelet turned up in Judith's car 3 days later. No apologies came my way, just relief in the family group chat that another missing item had been found. By the 4th disappearance, a crystal bird from Tom's grandmother's collection, I saw the pattern clearly. Something valuable would vanish during family gatherings. Suspicion immediately fell on me. Tom would become oddly defensive. Days later, the item would reappear somewhere unexpected. "You're overthinking this," my friend Melissa said when I confided in her. "Why would your husband's family target you?" "Helen never approved of Tom marrying someone from my side of town," I said. "She wanted him with Rachel's college roommate, the cardiologist's daughter." But the pattern continued through every holiday and celebration. A fountain pen, a gift card, a vintage watch. Each time accusations came my way, and each time, Tom's behavior grew increasingly strange. I started documenting everything: what went missing, when, who noticed it, and Tom's reactions. The list filled pages of a hidden journal. By our 2nd anniversary, I was making excuses to skip family gatherings. The family saw this as proof of guilt. What innocent person avoids family functions? "You're making yourself look suspicious," Tom complained after I missed his nephew's birthday. "Everyone thinks you're avoiding them because you feel guilty." Guilty of what? Things I never took that magically reappear later? "Why don't you ever stand up for me?" Instead of answering, he stormed out. He returned hours later with an expensive bouquet and silver pendant I knew we couldn't afford on our modest incomes. That's when I noticed other inconsistencies. Despite our mounting credit card debt, Tom occasionally brought home surprising purchases: golf clubs, designer sunglasses, and expensive watch. When questioned, he'd mumble about sales or bonuses that never appeared in our bank statements. Family members began treating me with open suspicion. Helen would call Tom frequently, always asking to speak with him privately. At gatherings, relatives would subtly move their purses when I passed by. Tom's behavior was most puzzling. Rather than being upset by accusations against his wife, he seemed energized by the drama. During incidents, he'd become hyperactive, talking loudly, laughing too hard, eyes darting around the room. After Easter dinner, when Helen's coral bracelet went missing, I began questioning my own sanity. Was I taking things unconsciously? Was stress causing memory lapses? My doctor found nothing wrong but suggested therapy for situational anxiety. That might have been the end of it, me accepting the role of unstable outsider, if not for what happened last month. While helping in Helen's kitchen, I accidentally knocked over Tom's jacket. As I picked it up, something fell from the pocket: a silver money clip engraved with his father's initials. The same clip Helen had tearfully reported missing hours earlier. I froze, suddenly understanding every accusation, every strange reaction from Tom over 3 years. I carefully returned the clip to his pocket and hung the jacket exactly as it had been. That night, I lay awake beside my sleeping husband, connecting dots I should have seen long ago. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving at Helen's house. Her prized pearl necklace would be worn as it was every year. This time I'd be watching Tom's every move. I couldn't sleep that night. Tom's gentle snoring beside me felt like a betrayal as I stared at the ceiling, replaying 3 years of accusations in my mind. By morning I had made my decision. I'm thinking of getting a small security camera for the house, I mentioned casually over breakfast, watching Tom's reaction carefully. There've been break-ins reported in the neighborhood. His spoon paused halfway to his mouth. That seems excessive. We don't have anything worth stealing. Just for peace of mind, I said, smiling as I refilled his coffee. Besides, my laptop's in the house while we're both at work. He shrugged, returning to his cereal. Whatever makes you feel better, I guess. That afternoon I bought a tiny camera disguised as a USB charger. I set it up in our bedroom, angled toward Tom's dresser and closet. The guilt I felt at spying on my husband was overshadowed by months of suspicion and isolation. 3 days passed uneventfully. Then came Sunday dinner at Helen's house. As expected, her silver serving spoon, a wedding gift from her mother, went missing during dessert. The pointed looks in my direction were so familiar they almost didn't sting anymore. Tom was unusually quiet on the drive home. He turned up the radio when I tried to discuss what had happened, effectively shutting down conversation. That night he went to bed claiming a headache while I stayed up watching TV. Around midnight I heard our bedroom floor creak. Pretending to be asleep on the couch, I watched through half-closed eyes as Tom moved quietly to the front door, checked the peephole, then slipped outside. He returned 15 minutes later and went straight to the bedroom. The next morning I waited until he left for work, then rushed to check the camera footage. My hands trembled as I connected it to my laptop. There, in grainy but clear video, was Tom at 1:17 a.m., carefully removing something from his jacket pocket. A silver serving spoon that caught the dim light from our bedside lamp. He slid it into the back of his sock drawer, underneath a stack of rarely worn dress socks. I sat motionless, staring at the screen. Seeing it with my own eyes made it impossible to deny what I'd suspected. My husband was stealing from his own family and letting me take the blame. I fast-forwarded through the footage, watching as Tom left the house for those 15 minutes, presumably to take the long way around the block to check if anyone was watching our home. With shaking hands I went to his sock drawer. There it was, exactly where he'd hidden it. I took photos with my phone, careful to replace everything exactly as I'd found it. Then I covered my tracks, resetting the camera to continue recording. Over the next 2 weeks I gathered evidence. I moved the camera around our bedroom, catching Tom hiding various small items. Aunt Judith's missing earbuds, Uncle Paul's commemorative coin, a pair of designer sunglasses I recognized from Helen's collection. Most disturbingly, I discovered a small box in our detached garage, hidden beneath his fishing tackle. Inside were dozens of items I'd never seen before. Jewelry, electronic gadgets, gift cards still in their envelopes. Things taken not just from family, but possibly from his workplace or friends' homes. Each discovery was like a physical blow. This man I'd married, defended, and loved was systematically stealing from those closest to him while watching me bear the blame. The betrayal felt like drowning. I needed help but wasn't sure where to turn. The police? Would they believe me over Tom, whose family was well connected in our small town? His parents had donated the children's wing of our local hospital. My family owned a modest landscaping business. Then I remembered Martinez, Officer James Martinez. We'd gone to high school together before he joined the police force. His sister had been my lab partner in chemistry. We weren't close, but we were friendly whenever we crossed paths at the grocery store or local diner. I found his number through a mutual friend and called from a coffee shop parking lot, away from home where Tom might overhear. "Sarah? It's been a while," he said, sounding genuinely pleased to hear from me. "Jim, I need advice," I said, my voice catching. "It's about something complicated." He must have heard the fear in my voice. "Is it an emergency? Are you safe?" "I'm safe," I assured him. "But I've discovered something troubling and I'm not sure what to do." We arranged to meet that afternoon at a diner 2 towns over. I called in sick to my nursing shift, something I never did. The 40-minute drive gave me time to organize my thoughts. Jim was already there when I arrived, in civilian clothes rather than uniform. His kind eyes widened with concern as I slid into the booth. "You look exhausted," he said. I told him everything. The years of accusations, my growing suspicions, and finally the evidence I'd gathered. I showed him the photos on my phone and screenshots from the camera footage. "This is significant," he said finally. "But complicated. Family matters usually are." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "If I confront him, he'll know I've been watching him. If I tell his family, they might not believe me." You need more conclusive evidence, Jim said thoughtfully. Something that happens in front of witnesses. And you need protection when it all comes out. That's when the plan began forming. Thanksgiving was 4 days away. Helen always wore her pearl necklace, a family heirloom passed down from her grandmother. It was the perfect opportunity. I could help, Jim offered. Unofficially as a friend. I'm off duty that day. Why would you do that? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. My sister Rachel went through something similar with her ex. Nobody believed her at first. By the time they did, the damage was done. He met my eyes. Nobody should face this kind of manipulation alone. We spent the next hour planning. Jim would arrive at Thanksgiving dinner as my supposed friend, someone I'd invited for moral support since family gatherings had become so tense. We'd maintain a casual friendship story, reconnected through a mutual friend, nothing suspicious. What if the necklace doesn't go missing? I asked. Trust me, Jim said grimly. If this pattern is as consistent as you've described, he won't be able to resist the opportunity. The day before Thanksgiving, I came home early from my shift. The house was empty. Tom had basketball with colleagues on Wednesdays. I set up the camera one last time, angling it perfectly toward our closet and bed. Then I waited, my heart pounding like a trapped animal in my chest, for what I knew would come next. I heard Tom's key in the lock just after 9. My heart hammered as I pretended to be engrossed in a magazine on the couch. The camera was in place, recording silently from its hiding spot. Long practice, I commented, not looking up. Coach kept us late, he mumbled, dropping his gym bag. I'm going to shower. I waited until I heard the water running before slipping into our bedroom. The basketball bag sat on the floor, slightly unzipped. I hesitated, then carefully peered inside. Nothing unusual, just sweaty clothes and his water bottle. That night, sleep evaded me. I lay beside Tom, listening to his even breathing, wondering if tomorrow would finally bring the truth to light. I'd been living with suspicion for so long it had become a constant companion, like chronic pain you learn to endure. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and crisp. Tom seemed unusually cheerful, whistling as he showered. I moved mechanically through my morning routine, checking my phone repeatedly for messages from Jim. You seem nervous, Tom remarked as we loaded pumpkin pies into the car. Everything okay? Just the usual holiday stress, I replied, forcing a smile. By the way, I invited a friend to join us. Hope that's okay. His cheerful demeanor faltered. A friend? Who? Jim Martinez. We went to high school together. He doesn't have family in town. Tom's eyes narrowed slightly. You never mentioned him before. We reconnected recently, I said, the lie coming easier than expected. His sister was my lab partner senior year. Remember, I told you about running into him at Miller's Grocery last month? I hadn't, but Tom often half listened to my stories. He nodded vaguely, apparently accepting the explanation. We arrived at Helen's colonial-style home just before noon. The house was already full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Tom's siblings with their spouses and children. I felt the familiar chill as I entered, the subtle shift in conversation, the strained smiles that never reached their eyes. Helen greeted Tom warmly, then offered me a stiff nod. She wore her Thanksgiving outfit, a burgundy dress with her pearl necklace gleaming at her throat. 3 strands of perfectly matched creamy pearls with a diamond clasp, passed down through generations. She touched it unconsciously as she spoke, a habit I'd noticed over the years. Who's this friend you're bringing? She asked, her tone suggesting an intrusion rather than hospitality. Jim Martinez, I explained. He's on his own for the holiday. Martinez. Her eyebrows lifted. From that family on Orchard Street? The subtle class judgment wasn't lost on me. The Martinez family lived in the same modest neighborhood as my parents. He'll be here around 2, I said, ignoring her tone. He insisted on bringing dessert. Tom disappeared into the den with his brothers while I helped in the kitchen. I kept my phone close, checking periodically for Jim's messages. At 1:30 he texted, "On my way. You doing okay?" I replied quickly, "Fine. Nothing yet. See you soon." The meal passed in a blur of forced conversation and pointed questions. Helen seated me between Tom's young niece and elderly Uncle Walter, who was hard of hearing, effectively isolating me from meaningful conversation. I watched Tom carefully throughout the meal. He seemed edgy, drinking more wine than usual, laughing too loudly at his brother's jokes. After the main course, Helen excused herself to freshen up before dessert. I tensed, knowing this was likely when it would happen. Tom waited exactly 4 minutes before muttering something about checking his fantasy football scores and slipping upstairs. Jim arrived during this brief window, ringing the doorbell just as Tom disappeared up the staircase. I practically ran to answer it, relief washing over me at the sight of his familiar face. Perfect timing, I whispered as he handed me a store-bought pie. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded slightly, leading him into the dining room to introduce him to the family. I could feel their assessment as they shook his hand, noting his department store clothes, his calloused hands. Jim played his part perfectly, charming Tom's sisters with compliments about the food and engaging Uncle Walter in a conversation about vintage cars. 10 minutes passed. 15. Tom returned looking slightly flushed. He eyed Jim suspiciously before taking his seat, deliberately placing himself between us. "Tom, this is Jim," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "We were just talking about Coach Mendez. Remember him from high school?" Tom mumbled a greeting, his attention clearly elsewhere as his eyes darted periodically toward the staircase. Helen still hadn't returned. The scream came just as Aunt Judith was serving coffee. A high-pitched wail from upstairs that cut through all conversation. Everyone froze as Helen appeared at the top of the stairs, her face contorted with distress. "My necklace," she cried, her hands clutching her now bare throat. "It's gone. I took it off to wash my face and now it's gone." The room erupted into motion. Tom's brothers rushed upstairs while the women gathered around Helen, guiding her to a chair. Tom remained oddly still, his face pale, eyes fixed on his mother. "When exactly did you last see it?" Tom's father asked, his voice steady despite the tension. "Just 20 minutes ago," Helen sobbed. "I placed it on the vanity while I washed up." All eyes turned to scan the room, mentally accounting for everyone's whereabouts during that time. I felt the familiar weight of suspicion settling on me, but this time something was different. Several people had noticed Tom's absence as well. Jim caught my eye across the room. The slightest nod passed between us. I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the small digital recorder I'd started when Helen first screamed. Everything happening now would be documented. Tom's father organized a search party. Everyone look around their seats under the table. It might have fallen if someone found it and tried to return it. I watched Tom carefully. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he made a show of checking under napkins and behind serving dishes. His movements were jerky, his smile strained as he attempted to appear helpful. Helen's gaze finally landed on me, narrowing with familiar accusation. I steeled myself for what was coming next, knowing that in the next few minutes, everything would change forever. "Sarah," she began, her voice hardening. "You went upstairs earlier, didn't you? To use the bathroom." I hadn't, but before I could respond, Tom jumped in. "Maybe we should check everyone's pockets and purses," he suggested, his voice an octave higher than normal. "Just to be sure." And there it was, his predictable response. Jim shifted slightly, positioning himself near the kitchen doorway as planned. The stage was set for what would happen next. "I have nothing to hide," I said, opening my purse wide for everyone to see. "Check all you want." Helen peered inside, disappointment flashing across her face when she found nothing. The tension in the room grew thick as other family members reluctantly opened their bags and emptied pockets, yielding nothing but phones, wallets, and tissues. "What about your jacket, Sarah?" Helen pressed, nodding toward the coat I'd hung in the foyer. "Perhaps it slipped into a pocket?" Tom's father retrieved my jacket, turning the pockets inside out. "This is ridiculous," Rachel, Tom's sister, finally spoke up. "Mom, are you sure you didn't leave it somewhere else? Maybe in your jewelry box before we arrived." "I was wearing it during dinner." Helen snapped. "I only took it off upstairs." Tom paced nervously, glancing repeatedly toward the kitchen. "Maybe someone should check the bathroom again. Or the hallway. It could have fallen." I caught Jim's eye, giving the slightest nod. It was time. "Tom," I said quietly, "empty your pockets, please." The room fell silent. Tom froze mid-step, his face draining of color. "What?" His laugh sounded hollow. "You think I took my mother's necklace? That's absurd." Your pockets, Tom, I repeated, my voice stronger now. This is outrageous, Helen interjected. Why would my son take my necklace? Sarah, if you're trying to deflect. Tom, his father interrupted, just empty your pockets so we can move on. Tom's hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone, wallet, and car keys. His relief was visible when nothing incriminating appeared. Satisfied? He asked, a smug smile forming. What about your jacket pocket? I asked. The inside one. The smugness vanished. I don't think I wore a jacket today. The navy blazer hanging by the back door, I clarified. The one you wore when you went upstairs earlier. Every eye in the room turned toward the kitchen where the family's coats hung on hooks near the back entrance. Tom's face contorted with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Fear mixed with something else. Rage, perhaps. Why are you doing this? He demanded, taking a step toward me. First you bring a stranger to our family dinner, now you're accusing me? I'm not accusing anyone, I replied evenly. I just think we should check all the possibilities. Helen stood abruptly. I'll get the jacket. No. Tom lunged forward, blocking her path. This is crazy. Sarah's trying to manipulate everyone. His outburst shocked the room into silence. Even Helen seemed taken aback by his vehemence. Jim shifted slightly, moving closer to me. Tom, he said calmly, why don't you want your mother to check your jacket? Stay out of this. Tom snarled. You don't even belong here. The room's atmosphere changed perceptibly as everyone registered Tom's unusual behavior. His brothers exchanged glances. His father frowned. Son, Mr. Wilson said carefully, just let your mother check the jacket and we can put this to rest. She's turning you all against me, Tom said, his voice rising. Don't you see? This is what she does. I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. Tom, if there's nothing in your jacket, why are you so upset? He turned on me then, eyes blazing. You planted something, didn't you? You and your new friend here planned this whole thing. When would I have done that, Tom? I asked. I've been in this room the entire time except to use the downstairs bathroom. Everyone saw me. Several people nodded in confirmation. She's lying. Tom shouted, pointing at me wildly. She's been trying to turn everyone against me for years. Helen looked confused, torn between defending her son and the growing evidence of his strange behavior. Thomas, please calm down. Let's just check the jacket and... Enough. Tom lunged at me suddenly, grabbing my shoulders. Tell them the truth. Tell them you took it. The room erupted in gasps. Jim moved forward, but not before Tom did something no one expected. He slapped me hard across the face. The sound echoed in the stunned silence. I staggered back, my cheek burning as Tom's family froze in collective shock. No one had ever seen Tom violent before. Perfect timing, I said calmly, tasting blood from my split lip. Tom blinked, confused by my response. Before he could react, Jim stepped into the room from the kitchen doorway. I think that's enough, he said, his voice carrying the authority of his profession even in civilian clothes. Who the hell are you to tell me what's enough in my parents' house? Tom spat. Jim Martinez, he replied evenly. And while I'm here as Sarah's friend today, I'm also a police officer with Riverside PD. The revelation rippled through the room. Helen sank back into her chair, her hand covering her mouth. Officer Martinez was kind enough to join us today, I explained, keeping my eyes on Tom, after I found this in your sock drawer yesterday morning. I pulled my phone from my pocket, displaying the photo I'd taken of Helen's pearl necklace nestled among Tom's socks. Tom's face contorted. You went through my things? After watching you hide your mother's money clip in the same drawer last month? Yes, I did. Mr. Wilson moved toward the kitchen. I'm checking that jacket. Don't bother, Jim said, producing an evidence bag from his pocket. Inside lay the pearl necklace, carefully sealed. I already found it while everyone was searching. Professional habit. I notice when someone's trying too hard to direct attention away from something. Tom's eyes darted between the necklace, Jim, and the nearest exit. Calculation crossed his features as he weighed his options. This is all a misunderstanding, he tried, his voice suddenly conciliatory. I found it on the floor and was going to return it after dessert. Make it a surprise. Tom, I said softly, I have videos of you hiding your mother's earrings, Judith's bracelet, and at least a dozen other items over the past month. I know about the box in the garage. I know everything. The blood drained from his face. His shoulders slumped as the weight of exposure crashed down on him. Why? Helen whispered, tears streaming down her face. Why would you steal from your own family? Tom remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. And why let them think it was me? I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Tom's laugh was hollow, devoid of humor. It was so easy. You were always the outsider, the girl from the wrong part of town. They were ready to believe the worst about you from day one. The cruelty of his admission hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of isolation, suspicion, and doubt, all deliberately orchestrated by the man who had promised to love and protect me. Well, Jim said, breaking the horrified silence, I think we've imposed on your family gathering long enough. Sarah, are you ready to go? I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the weight of vindication. You can't leave with him. Tom snarled, making one last desperate lunge toward me. He never reached me. His own brothers stepped between us, their expressions a mixture of disgust and disbelief. I think you've done enough, his father said coldly. Sit down, Thomas. As Jim guided me toward the door, Helen called out, her voice breaking, Sarah, wait. I paused, turning to face the woman who had judged me so harshly for years. Did you know? She asked, her eyes pleading for an answer I couldn't give. All this time? No, I replied honestly. But I know now. Jim and I drove in silence, the weight of what had just happened settling between us. My cheek throbbed where Tom had struck me. 3 years of marriage, and he had never raised a hand to me before. Somehow that final betrayal seemed fitting. The mask completely dropped at last. Do you want to press charges? Jim asked finally, keeping his eyes on the road. For the theft or the assault? Either. Both. I gazed out the window at the suburban houses decorated for Thanksgiving, families visible through lit windows, unaware that my life had just imploded. I don't know yet. I need time to think. Jim nodded, understanding. You can stay at my sister's tonight if you need a place. Rachel would be happy to have you. Thank you, I said, but I need to go home and pack some things. I can't stay in that house anymore. As we pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. Helen's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it, not ready for that conversation. Want me to come in with you? Jim offered. No, I said, summoning strength I didn't know I had. This part one need to do alone. Inside, the house felt different, like a stage set I was seeing with fresh eyes. Photos of Tom and me on the walls now seemed like evidence of an elaborate fiction. I moved methodically through the rooms, gathering essentials. Clothes, important documents, medications, and the hidden camera I'd used to collect evidence. In our bedroom, I paused before Tom's closet. Sliding open the door, I stared at his neatly hung shirts, the shoes arranged precisely on the floor. The order seemed ironic now, the controlled exterior hiding such chaos beneath. My phone buzzed again. Rachel, Tom's sister. Then again, his father. I silenced them all. There would be time for explanations later. For now, I needed space to breathe. As I zipped my suitcase, I heard a car door slam outside. Running to the window, I saw Tom marching up the walkway, his face contorted with rage. Jim was out of his car in an instant, intercepting him at the front door. I couldn't hear their exchange, but Tom's wild gesticulating told me all I needed to know. When he tried to push past, Jim placed a firm hand on his chest, saying something that made Tom step back. Finally, Tom stormed to his car and sped away, tires squealing on pavement. 20 minutes later, I was checked into a motel on the edge of town, sitting on a faded bedspread as the events of the day replayed in my mind. Jim had followed to ensure I arrived safely, then left me his card with both his professional and personal numbers. Call any time, he'd said. Day or night. Alone in the quiet room, I finally allowed myself to cry, not delicate tears but racking sobs that left me gasping for air. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the years spent doubting myself, for the person I'd become while trying to prove my innocence. When the tears finally subsided, I took a hot shower, scrubbing away the feeling of Tom's hands on my shoulders, the memory of his palm against my cheek. Afterward, I checked my phone. 14 missed calls, 27 text messages. I scrolled through them, surprised by the variety of senders. Helen, please call me. We need to talk. Rachel, I'm so sorry, Sarah. We should have seen it. Aunt Judith, I never should have doubted you. And surprisingly, messages from cousins and in-laws who had barely spoken to me at family gatherings, now expressing shock and sympathy. Tom had left several voicemails, his tone evolving from rage to pleading to manipulation. You're making a mistake. We can work this out. If you tell anyone else, you'll regret it. The last one gave me pause. I forwarded it to Jim with a brief text. Potential threat? His response came quickly. Documented. Don't engage. We'll handle it. The "we" comforted me. For the first time in years I wasn't facing this alone. Morning brought a knock at my door. Through the peephole I saw Helen, looking smaller somehow, more fragile without her usual polished demeanor. I hesitated, then opened the door. May I come in? She asked, her voice hoarse from crying. I stepped aside. She entered, her eyes taking in the motel room with its sparse furnishings before settling on my bruised cheek. He did that to you, she said quietly. Not a question. I nodded. Thomas's not well, she said carefully. We found more things in his car. Items from friends, neighbors, even his workplace. He's been doing this for years apparently. I know, I replied, remembering the box in our garage. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. The police came this morning. They found quite a collection in your garage. Tom wasn't there, he didn't come home last night. A chill ran through me. Do they know where he is? No. His credit card was used at a gas station near the state line. She met my eyes directly. I didn't come to defend him, Sarah. I came to apologize. The words I'd waited years to hear now brought little satisfaction. 3 years, I said, my voice catching. 3 years of accusations, suspicion, isolation. You all were so quick to believe the worst of me. Yes, she admitted, her shoulders sagging. We were. I was. And I'm ashamed. Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken pain and regret. What happens now? Asked finally. Thomas's father is speaking with a lawyer. And a therapist. She sighed deeply. The family wants to make things right with you however we can. The irony wasn't lost on me. Acceptance from the family at precisely the moment I was leaving it. I filed for separation this morning, I told her. My friend Melissa helped me find an attorney. Helen nodded, unsurprised. Of course. No one expects otherwise. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. The family would. I would understand if you never wanted to see any of us again. But I hope someday you might allow us to try to make amends. After she left, I sat by the window watching the parking lot fill with travelers stopping for a quick rest before continuing their journeys. In a way, that's what the past 3 years had been for me. A temporary stop on the way to somewhere else, somewhere I was now free to discover. My phone buzzed with a text from Jim. Tom's been located. He's in custody. You're safe now. The relief that washed over me wasn't just about physical safety. It was the liberation of finally being believed, of having my reality validated after years of gaslighting and doubt. 3 days later, I signed a lease on a small apartment across town. As I unpacked my few belongings, I found a photo that had slipped between folders. Tom and me on our wedding day, faces alight with hope and promise. I studied it for a long moment, then placed it gently in the trash. That chapter was closed. The future, however uncertain, was finally my own to write.